Cast is now
Hold on.
starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
There's about the attendees are all logging on now, or showing up
Okay.
that they're logged in. Okay. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. This is Doreen Kenny with Georgia Council on Substance Abuse for the March webinar on the ROSC, Recovery Orientated System of Care, Applying for CARES. We have Karen Daniel as the presenter and Jay Hughes as the presenter. I will let them introduce themselves. I'm just going to do a few housekeeping. Anyone who is calling in as an attendee, which I see there's about 31 of you so far, and the numbers are going up. If you're on the phone and you have a question or comment, you will have to type in the answer. You have to type in the question. But on the webinar, as a webinar, if you have your mouse, you can click raise your hand, and I will announce your name and unmute you so you can ask your question. And they will really like people to be interactive with the webinar, so I will definitely get to you so your questions will be answered. If anyone has any other questions or concerns, you can chat to me and I will direct it to the presenters. Okay, go ahead, you guys. Somebody just got off.
Hi, my name is Jay Hughes, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me, I have not used any drugs and alcohol in over 13 years. I am the director of trainers at the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, and I believe that I promote long-term recovery because I believe that recovery should be a right for everyone. Here at the council, we believe that recovery is the expectation. We believe that at the council that so many people get sick so many different ways, so we encourage and we advocate for people to get well in various different ways. So I will Karen Daniel is going to introduce herself now.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Karen Daniel. I'm a person in long-term recovery. It's been over 30 years since I used any kind of mind-altering drug to change my mood. And I am the CARES liaison. So we are here to present the ROSC CARES workshop, actually the workshop webinars. So this webinar will be a 90-minute webinar. We want to leave room at the end of the webinar, probably 15 minutes for questions. Normally this workshop that we present throughout the state of Georgia is about 3.5 to 4 hours, but we've condensed it so that we can present this webinar. There were so many people that did not get an opportunity to get to one of the workshops. We had to close several of them because of attendance. So we're ready to get started, and I think we can get started with our first slide. Actually, our team member, Loree Jones, is not able to make this one, but Jay and I are going to hold the fort down and get ready to begin. Jay?
All right, we always start everything off with right with you. So, and one of the reasons why we start off with right with you is because we believe that people should be able to build upon the strengths. We believe that if we really take some time to do some self-examination, we will realize that there's a lot of things that is going right in our everyday life. So we always try to start off every meeting, every presentation, and all our group focuses on, one of the things we focus on is what's right with you. So, and we build upon those strengths, and you will see that in that first slide. The second slide, we talk about that recovery is for everyone. So if you look at the slide, you will see different ethnic groups. We believe in diversity, we believe in inclusion, and we believe in equity. So one of the things that we promote at the council is that recovery is the expectation and that recovery is for everyone. Karen?
And actually, our organization, actually, if you came into our office, you would see that we have some old, some young, some white, some black, we have gay, we have straight, we have fairly wealthy people like Jay, and we have poor people like Karen. But anyway, so we believe that we believe that recovery is for everybody, and we try and practice that in our office setting. Let's talk about what's right with you, or what's right since 1999. The slide talks a little bit about the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. They were the originators of the peer work here in Georgia. They're called Certified Peer Specialists. And so that you don't get mixed up, we also, as CARES, will be Certified Peer Specialists /AD after we take the CARES Academy and pass an exam, 50-question exam, we become certified as CPSAD. But going back to the Georgia Mental Health and the slide that you see in front of you, they probably now in the year 2019 have probably trained over 2,000 people now. Their trainings are usually 6 a year. They train 40 to 50 people in their trainings. Unlike us, we usually have 4 to 5 academies per year, and we train usually about 18 to 20 people in each academy. So the competition is going to be stiff, especially this time. So anyway, so Certified Peer Specialist movement began in Georgia back in 1999. The Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, as I said, were in the forefront of that. The Certified Addiction Recovery Empowerment Specialists, which we are known as, the first academy was in January of 2011. So 8 years later, we are now getting ready for Academy 33 this coming Monday. In 2010, the CHIPRA, which was training parents and peer support specialists for young adults. And then the Youth Peer Movement Specialists were trained in 2014. When I retired from my job, I got an opportunity to go to a meeting in my community. The Georgia Recovery Initiative was there. A group of persons that represented the mental health arena and also the substance abuse arena went to the 6 regions in the state of Georgia and asked that community activists or just people that were concerned, stakeholders in the community, would come to like a session where we could find out just how things were going as it related to people in recovery and what the communities needed, because they knew that very shortly the psychiatric hospitals would be closing. We knew that veterans were coming back from wars with some of the addictive personality, not just personalities, but addicted to some of the painkillers that they were given. And then we knew that these persons returning to the community, whether they be from veterans of war, whether they be from the psychiatric hospitals, or just coming back from treatment because, there was epidemics going on or near epidemics, I could say. And some of the communities had few resources, so they were wanting to know how they could support communities and provide resources for persons that that were looking for recovery. So this Georgia initiative began, and it went around to all the 6 regions in Georgia. They were promoting recovery from addiction and mental health. And as a result of that, they came up with some very important things, and we'll talk a little bit about it later. But as you can see, this Georgia Recovery Initiative met with Commissioner Berry in 2012, and Commissioner Berry announced the creation of the Office of Recovery Transformation, which is now headed by Tony Sanchez, who is a CARES AD, and has been very instrumental in providing a lot of the money that has come down from the federal government to see that CARES and CPSs are working in certain positions throughout the state. Some of the things that they had listening sessions, people in local communities told their recovery stories, their hopes, their successes, and certainly their vision. And then from the Georgia Recovery Initiative, they came up with a definition, and we're going to read that in just a second. So the next slide shows Georgia's definition of recovery. Jay, you want to read one of those, and I'll read a couple or something?
Sure. Georgia's definition of recovery. The first bullet is recovery is a deeply personal, unique, and self-determined journey through which individuals strive to reach his or her full potential. Persons in recovery improve their health and wellness by taking responsibility and pursuing a fulfilling and contributing life while embracing the difficulties one has faced.
And recovery is not a gift from any system. Recovery is nurtured by relationships and environments that provide hope, empowerment, choices, and opportunities. Recovery belongs to the person. It is a right, and it is a responsibility of us all. So when you think back on some of these, I'm sure you can find your recovery story in some of this definition, because actually they had pages and pages full of the stories of people that came to these listening sessions. And this is what stood out from all of them. So that Georgia has created their definition of recovery. When you think about it, we know that recovery is nurtured by relationships and environments that provide hope. And I can think of my own recovery story when I finally decided that I wanted recovery. I certainly was impressed by walking into some of the areas that I went into and finding people that gave me hope that I could do this, that recovery was possible, and it could be some of the choices that I could make. And I made fairly good choices as a result of actually just being around people that were in recovery themselves. So I formed good relationships and looked for people that were also looking for the same thing and that I was looking for, and that was a meaningful life. Jay, can you think of anything that kind of referred to your recovery in this definition?
One of the things that resonate with me every time I read this definition is recovery is not a gift from any system. For me, and if just as a sidebar, if you notice at the beginning of our introduction when we do what we call our elevator speech, we always talk about we always reference how many years that we have. And after we talk about how many years we have, we always celebrate by a clap or a round of applause. And we do that because for me, I don't know about anybody else, but one day, to get through one day was a challenge and also a victory for me. So when I think about recovery not being a gift from any system, it wasn't. The system didn't give it to me. It was something that I had to earn, something I had to work for, and something I have to continue to strive for and be conscious of every day. So that one always kind of sticks out for me because I believe that it wasn't a gift. My recovery wasn't a gift from any system. It was something that I earned and that I worked for, and consequently that helped have positive impact in my life.
One of the things I think Georgia has come to the realization, and probably a lot of states too, is that it is a responsibility of us all. That means that communities are really going to have to be responsible for supporting people that are trying to change their life, because you think of that when you have people that are trying to change their life for the better, then crime goes down and other things. When you can think about DFACs and some of the women that had lost, or not just women, but men too, that had lost families. And so when you try and look for something to better your life, the community certainly should rally behind you, we feel, and make that person feel like they have every right to recovery. Georgia's recovery values emerges from hope, which is what I talked about initially when I found recovery. I heard people's story and I thought, wow, if that's something they can do, that's a possibility. I might just be able to do this. I was able to find hope just listening to stories. It's person-driven. Actually, I was in the driver's seat. I could make my own decisions. And, of course, it was based on maybe some good advice from other people, but it was my decision to decide that I was going to really try and do this the right way this time. Strength-based. I was able to work with the strengths that I had rather than have somebody tell me what I had to do. It was a much more successful recovery for me when I was able to work with my strengths. Anything that stands out to you, Jay?
Just when I go through these and I examine every one of these values, I kind of see how they are congruent. So as Karen pointed out with the first couple of bullets, that emerges from hope. It is person-driven. So no matter what my situation is, even when I was in active addiction, I was always a person, and I was able to build upon those strengths, as you see in the next bullet, and age independent. Doesn't matter how old you was. And one of the things that I love about the state of Georgia, what they have done is they have recognized the value of the lived experience, because the things that I've been through and the things that you have been through is very valuable, and it was costly. And also, as we keep going through these bullets, one of the things that the values are occurs via many pathways. So we believe that there is no one way on one size fits all. We believe that recovery should be tailor fit for the individual. We believe that one of the values is that it's holistic. We address mind, body, and soul. It's supported by peers, allies, advocates, and families. So, in order for us to really be able to have a sustainable recovery, I believe it has to be supported by peers, people that have the same lived experience. Also, if you don't have any allies, I suggest you get you some, and some other advocates that can help you to help sustain and maintain your recovery. It's nurtured through relationships and social networks is culturally based and influenced. So when we talk about culture, we believe that everything we do is in the context of culture. So we try to be sensitive and acknowledge other cultures because we come from different places. We have to try to. I try to make sure that I understand other people based on the cultural context. It is anchored in wellness, addresses the person's emotional health, environmental well-being, financial satisfaction, intellectual creativity, occupational pursuits, physical activities, social engagement, and spiritual health. Addresses trauma, supports self-responsibility, empowers communities, and last but definitely not least is based on respect. So as I look at these values, one always strikes me, and that's the one that addresses trauma. For me, in active addiction, and I spent about 18 years in federal and state prison, I had to acknowledge that I had some trauma in my life. That was a direct result from my substance use disorder. So the trauma one is one that always kind of strikes me. What about you, Karen?
Well, I like, once again, this whole thing about empowers communities, because I think when people get better, communities get better, families get better, and certainly I can remember years ago when things were very bad in the community that I was living in because of the crack epidemic, really. That there were things that were going on in the community that certainly would not have gone on had people not been in positions where they were desperate for finding money or to be able to support themselves and support their habit, really is what it amounted to. So I think when people get better, communities get better. Also, that addresses trauma. Just in working with women, that I was actually a house manager at a women's residence at one time, everybody that I talked to, I can only remember maybe just a few that didn't talk about trauma that they had experienced at some point in their life. And then, of course, again, it's anchored in wellness, meaning, my mental health is taken into consideration too, because oftentimes when we don't take care of our holistic self, we tend to suffer more than we would normally have to. If it's just a matter of doing some self-care and taking care of our mental and physical bodies also. So the next slide talks a little bit about what is it that connects and makes sense of recovery in the community services. What is it that connects and makes sense of these community services, and that is recovery. And recovery is really to live an ordinary, meaningful life guided by choices in local community or neighborhood. So one of the things that we have found out, and I think many states have found out, is that people want to recover in their neighborhoods. They want to recover where they have some semblance of not just responsibility, but also that they know people that they can perhaps count on that would be willing to support them in their endeavors. And I think more recently, the state of Georgia has put a lot of money into what we've called recovery centers, RCOs, recovery center organizations that really are offsprings of communities that decided, boy, this would be nice for us, a place where we could go and support one another and have activities, and not just for us, not just for people in recovery, but for families or for allies that were willing to support us. So to live an ordinary, meaningful life is, I think, what people just want to do. And it's very difficult when you're just trying to recover and have so many other barriers that you're facing. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But we know that individuals seeking or in early recovery are returning to the community from various places. Histories of active mental illness and addiction, of course. Completion of treatment, jails, prisons, and drug courts, and active military duty. Several years ago, the state realized that they were going to have to start shutting down their psychiatric hospitals. The one in Thomasville, which was a huge one, has already closed, and the plan is to close several others. And people would be returning to communities from the psychiatric hospitals with no resources in the community to support their recovery. So the state of Georgia has really been in the forefront of a lot of this peer work. In fact, I think it's probably number one in terms of peer work, because they recognize that the lived experience has made a difference in so many persons' life and in their maintaining their recovery. So as these people are returning to their communities, what's there to support their recovery? And this is the work now of the Georgia Council and Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network as we go into these communities and support them by providing the recovery community organizations, which is fairly new to this state, but certainly we have over, I think, 25 recovery community organizations now throughout the state. That's something y'all might want to look into. They're called recovery community organizations. Jay?
Yeah. Oh, I meant to tell y'all earlier that if you look under the handouts, we have 3 handouts that you can access through the link. One of them is for the ROSC Cares Workshop PDF. We have the reference letter PDF, and we have the writing sample PDF. So just know that you do have access to those links. What we at, Karen?
People in early recovery, page 4, have basic needs.
Right. So the basic needs that I believe that any human being have is the one. It's also the same needs that those in early recovery have, such as safe and affordable place to live, steady employment and job readiness, education and vocational skills. Life and recovery skills, health and wellness, sober and safe social support networks, and a sense of belonging and purpose.
All right. And as I think about that, when I found recovery, I was fortunate to have persons in my life that were really willing to support me. So I was able to stay with a family member. So I had a safe and affordable place to live. Of course, I was job hunting, had no job at the time, but I did have some skills, and that was pretty good. But I know oftentimes people that are returning to their community or just in their community that want to recover don't have the job skills, and so they're faced with trying to find an affordable place to live if they have no family to support them, and then trying to maintain on a very limited budget. But we know that they need these things. They also need education and vocational skills, which would obviously put them in a better position to apply for some of the jobs that are available. Life and recovery skills, and that happens in communities too. And as we said, these communities are going to be faced with people returning, and they're going to need some recovery skills and some life skills. I can remember a friend of mine's brother returning from, he'd been in prison, basic things like a cell phone and driver's license and a birth certificate, and the kind of barriers that not necessarily I don't know that the state set up for people that were returning, but certainly for various reasons, and it takes an effort to get that, because you can't really do anything now without a birth certificate. It's just very difficult. But they also needed health and wellness, and I know a lady the other day in a workshop was talking about people were getting well, but their teeth were rotting out because I think some of the drugs caused the teeth to rot. But just things like that, and all of a sudden when you're trying to get well and you're faced with medical issues that cannot be taken care of, what do you do? That seems to be a problem for a lot of people. But more importantly, sober and safe social networks, sober and safe social support networks, and that's going back to these recovery community organizations that are at least 25 to 26 right now, and then certainly others will be springing up in the few months and years to come. That is important for people, because I know that's one of the things that they talk about. I would like to be able to go someplace that's safe, I don't have to worry about, and I don't have to worry that there would be any kind of drugs of any type there. And then a sense of belonging and purpose. I think we all want that just as human beings, and you can find that in different places, but certainly for people that don't have a family connection in their community, that would be something that would be certainly important for them to have some place where they have a sense of belonging and purpose. And that's kind of what the 12-step arena did for me. I know there are other people that had other pathways, but we're looking for things to support us as we get well. So we normally do these things called dyads, and we ask people to pair up and find a partner, and then you talk a little bit about how you came back from something difficult. That's what this slide is. And you talk about what helped you. And so when they had these, when the Georgia Recovery Initiative went around to some of the, to the 6 regions, one of the things that they asked was what helped people and what kept them hopeful, but what helped them when they were in their recovery. And so the following slide talks about the responses. Family, certainly, I know my family was a big help for me when I decided that I wanted to find recovery or that I was, new to recovery. Support from different agencies, certainly. Friends was a big deal. I know moving to the state of Georgia, I was faced with finding new friends, but fortunately, I got involved with a recovery support group, and it wasn't long before I found friends and people were reaching out to me because we know the importance of making connections. I was able to do that right away, but certainly forgiveness. How did that work for you, Jay?
I think one of the biggest things for it's a few of them that kind of stand out, but time was one for me too, because I had to realize that even though that I had started living a safe and healthy life, that I couldn't necessarily put a timetable on other people's forgiveness, on other people seeing me in the way that I wanted to be seen. So I had to kind of realize that it wasn't my timetable to help to determine to place on somebody else as it relates to how either they forgave me or how they wanted to have a relationship with me. So time was the biggest thing, and also hope, because there was some very dark times throughout my life. But I believe that as long as I could always remain hopeful, then I can continue to have those new beginnings that will, in effect, allow me to take action. So, and I think one of the things that everyone, and I will be bold enough to say everyone that's in recovery, no matter how long you have, is resiliency. So that, to me, I like to use resilience synonymous with recovery, because I know how hard it can be to maintain a certain level of sustainable recovery, and just to have that resilience is something that really helped push me through.
Okay, and I look at these. I know hope was another one. I actually was wondering when I was going to hear my story, because I told you that I was a 12-stepper. So it's like, when will I hear my story in a meeting? And it wasn't long before I heard my story. A lady talked about losing her job, losing her children. I thought, okay, that's me. But at the same time, it the glimmer of hope, thinking, my goodness, this lady did that, and she looks clean, and she's well dressed, and she's got it together, and I would never have known. And so that gave me something to really strive for. I felt like if that lady could do it, maybe I stood a chance. But one of the things that she talked a little bit about is how difficult it was for her, but she was determined. In other words, her determination. She just was not going to let anything stop her in route to trying to recover. So yeah, that was another big thing. And I think new beginnings for me was another one. I moved from the state that I'd grown up in. I just didn't think it would be a good atmosphere for me anymore, and so I moved to the state of Georgia and found that new beginning was really what I needed to to really find a sustainable recovery. So let's see. Elements of a recovery or oriented system of care. That's what an ROSC is. So these are the kinds of things that the state of Georgia has committed itself to doing. In the if any of you go to some of the community service boards throughout the state of Georgia that are responsible for providing recovery to people to support recovery to people that are either recovering from substance abuse or mental health. And one of the things that they committed to do, actually all these bullets that they're saying that they're committed to doing, and it's not going to happen overnight. We know that things move slowly, but I've seen a difference in some of these community service boards. The one that I take a friend to, I've seen a difference, but it's supposed to be person-centered, meaning it's going to be centered around, what I want and around my needs, and not necessarily the same script for everybody that walks in there that has the same issue. It takes the person's needs into account. If I want to include my family and other allies, they can be involved with my recovery, whereas before, you had to go in by yourself and sit with a counselor, and they were going to tell you how it was going to work and what they were going to do and what they expected. Individualized, so in other words, it's going to be tailored to my needs. It can be across my lifespan, which is remarkable. When I went to treatment years ago, after I left that 28-day treatment program, they told me, you're welcome to come back for aftercare. That's a 6-week program, once a week, but we just suggest that you go to 12-step meetings. That was their suggestion. After spending, well, the insurance paid for thousands of dollars for a 28-day stay for me, I could not come back after that. I could not expect to come back, throughout my lifespan. The Georgia is providing these services throughout your lifespan. Systems anchored in the community, meaning I wouldn't have to go 40, 50 miles away to find something that they could offer in my community. So what's been cropping up, some of the community service boards have satellite offices throughout, because oftentimes some of them have to service 6, 7 counties, sometimes more than that. So they have satellite places throughout the counties so that it's not just centered in one place. You'd have to travel 100 miles or so to get to your community service board to get some service. What about strength-based? Once again, that was one of the things that we talked about earlier. Based on the strengths that I have, so if I have certain strengths in one area, that would be how I would, and I chose to work that way, then that would be how they would provide services for me. Culturally responsive, Jay mentioned that a minute ago, how specific cultures, you need to be aware of how that culture or the workings of that culture so that you don't offend anybody, that you can make a connection, and responsiveness to personal belief system, which is a big deal. And the others, on and on it goes, commitment to peer recovery support systems, inclusion of the voices and experience of recovering individuals and their families, certainly so. Integrated services, system-wide education and training, and that would be providing their staff members with that so that they get to hear some of these things that go on. And one of the ways that is done in the psychiatric hospitals, when they have their new staff orientation, we have persons that represent CARES and CPSs, and they speak at each of those new staff orientations so that the new staff gets to hear a story of hope, a story of recovery, a story that shows that people do recover and they don't necessarily have to come back in and out of some of the services that they provide, but so they get to hear a strong person in recovery, which is really great for that. And anything else? Let's see, adequately and flexibly financed. Wouldn't that be nice if the judicial system did that? But I know oftentimes I hear people talk about how their money goes to, they have to go and pay their parolee or whatever they pay. So oftentimes with some of the work that they're able to find, they still are bogged down with fines that they have to pay the court. But if it can be flexibly financed, that would make a difference. But of course, the community service boards are saying we'll flexibly finance the services that we provide for you. What about ROSC transformation, Jay?
So ROSC, a recovery-oriented system of care transformation, is more than just new skills, new paperwork, implementing evidence-based practices, added peer support services. So instead of just reshuffling the deck, in a sense, the transformation is just more than just new paperwork and new skills. So the transformation is based on what we talked about, what Karen referenced earlier about the elements of a ROSC.
Okay. And then this slide at the top of the next page shows GCSA, which is the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, in the upper left-hand corner. And some of our partners, we partner with the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network and the Georgia Parent Support Network to provide not just services, but other things oftentimes we'll get together and have. I know we acknowledge them when they have their recovery day at the Capitol, and they support us when we have our recovery day at the Capitol. So those are one of the ways that we support one another. And throughout the year, where there are various things that we do that are combined with the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. Not so much the Georgia Parent Support Network, but certainly the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. But this slide talks about some of the things that we are doing in communities. And if you notice, in the center of all that is CARES, the recovery coaches. So as it CARES, basically the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse centers its activities around the CARES that we provide services for. So If you're a CARES, you could possibly be working in at the one of the high schools that we are presently in. You might be working at a couple of we're in 3 or 4 hospitals actually in the state of Georgia. Various things, or you could be working in community service boards or other private agencies that are providing services, and that can be Medicaid bill where they can bill Medicaid for the services that you provide. So yeah. So here's we go with Recovery Coach, and this is of course what we as CARES do. We provide a personal guide and mentor for individuals seeking to achieve or sustain long-term recovery from addiction, regardless of pathway to recovery. We are connected to instrumental recovery supportive resources, including housing, employment, other professional and non-professional services, and we're the liaison to formal and informal community supports, resources, and recovery support activities. As CARES, as one of our core, 3 of our core competencies are we run recovery groups, or we do individual recovery check-ins, and we do recovery advocacy, whether it be for ourselves, for a peer, or for a system. The system certainly is when we do the rally at the Capitol every year. As when the state legislatures come back from recess, we go to the Capitol and speak to our representatives. We have a big rally, actually, and then we talk about recovery messaging, how to change our message and how we speak. When Jay and I introduce ourselves, we introduce ourselves as persons in long-term recovery rather than saying we're maybe an alcoholic or we are an addict. So we change our message that is more palatable, and people can really understand somebody that has long-term recovery. That sounds a lot more pleasing than somebody that says, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, does that mean you're still drinking? What does that mean? So we talk a little bit about recovery messaging when we advocate for our system. And certainly we do advocate for ourselves, and oftentimes we find ourselves advocating for our peers.
All right, so we're going to, before we move forward, we're going to take the opportunity to see if we can answer a few questions. Do we have any questions?
I was unmuting myself so I could. Can you guys hear me? Joya,
Yes.
I've unmuted you. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. About the recovery advocacy, I'm in criminal justice in Georgia State. Does that require a certain amount of, if you're advocating for someone through the court system, is that something you have to have a degree with to do anything with in the court system, or just have the experience through the CARES training?
Oh, so when we talk about advocacy, it's not, you can do that. You do, well, to answer your question, no, you do not have to have a degree to be an advocate on any level. So a lot of times what we tend to do, we advocate for ourselves, we advocate for our peers, we advocate within our community, and we advocate in the legislative level. So if you have a peer that you want to advocate for within the court system, you can do that as an individual, and you can do that as a CARES. So no, you do not have to have a degree in order to advocate for anyone on any level.
Okay, last but not least from me, Dennis wants to know, what are recovery community organizations?
So recovery community, go ahead.
Yes, he wants to get a little bit more clarity.
Okay, so recovery community organizations are organizations that are being sponsored by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disability. Money that came down just as Obama was leaving office. He put millions of dollars into this recovery movement, and he asked the states if they wanted to participate. Most states decided that they did. This was really a result of the opioid crisis. Other states didn't. Georgia agreed they wanted to be involved, and so Georgia got several $1 million to build community. It's almost like a community center. Well, a center for persons throughout the state of Georgia. And right now there are, like, I think I said 25 or 26 throughout the state of Georgia. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's run by peers, a lot of them. That's hopeful.
Thank
Did
you.
anybody have any
Yeah,
other questions?
Oh, yes, hold on. She put her hand back. Mallory, hold on, Mallory. Mallory, you are muted. You've muted yourself. So did you? Okay, go ahead. She's muted herself. So go ahead, you guys. I think that's
No other questions?
no. Well, the chat was also Joya, so she had a chat and then she
Oh,
had raised her
okay.
hand. So well, hold on one second.
Okay.
Mitchell Wilson, yes, okay, you've unmuted yourself, so you can go ahead and ask your question. Mitchell, I see your hand raised. Mitchell Wilson, did you have a question? Okay, I'm going to go on to Samantha Presley. Samantha, you're unmuted.
No?
Okay. Okay, she just self-muted. Okay, you just self-muted yourself, Samantha. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say people's last name. But Samantha, you self-muted yourself, and Mitchell, you self-muted yourself. So hold on, I'm going up here to Jennifer. Jennifer Yearwood, you're also self-muted. You guys are raising your hands, but you still have your muted button on your phone. So you will have to unmute your phone, and I'm unmuting you so you can talk. Okay, Samantha, you've unmuted yourself. You want to go ahead and ask your question? Okay. You guys, if you can, chat the message because I still can't hear you if you're there. I heard Joya fine. Okay, Jennifer, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just curious because I know that in doing the CPS application and the training process for a long time, and it seems to be more common now that you have to be currently working in the field. You don't have to be, but they have more slots for training. Is that also the case with CARES? Like if we're currently working in a CSB or in peer support, is it more likely that we would get chosen, or is it strictly based on the writing and reference sample?
Right. One of the things that we're real big about at the council is we make sure that we keep our standards and our integrity in line when it comes to our scoring and selection process. So to answer your question, no. So we do not base our decision off of where you work or any of that type of things when it comes to how we score. So the answer to that is no. So everyone will have a fair opportunity to be accepted and enrolled into CARES based upon their scores and or interview scores. So the answer to your question is no.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to Terry. Hold on one second. Let me undo. Terry Robinson, you're unmuted. You want to go ahead and ask your question, Terry?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question is how long.
Terry, we can't hear you that good.
You
You're killing it, baby. About to bust my ears.
Yeah, it's a
Bust my ears.
Yeah, echo, big echo.
Okay, hold on. Can I type it?
Question from my Harley Davidson.
I'm typing.
Terry, are you there? You want us to come back to you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's still kind of loud, but you can go ahead. You can try.
I was just wondering how long does the entire process take for the CARES?
Your question is how long will it take for you to become a CARES?
Yes.
Okay, so the way in which it works is you will submit your
I'm gonna put them on
your writing sample. You will submit your writing sample, and you will also submit your 2 reference letters. And we're going to get more into the writing samples and reference letters a little after we finish with the questions. So once you submit that, then if your scores meet our criteria, then you will be selected into the oral interview phase. And then from the oral interview phase, if you're selected from that, you will be invited to the CARES Academy. So it's contingent, the duration or the length of time that it takes to get in CARES is contingent upon how you score. So in the event that you score well with your writing samples and also score well with your oral interview and you're invited to the academy is 5 days of training from 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then after that, you will take, we're scheduled for you to take your exam. Upon completion of that exam, you will be completion and passing of that exam, then you will be a certified peer specialist for addictive disease. So that process can take anywhere from a couple months to more months, depending on if you're selected into that academy. So the time frames is sort of subjective based upon if you're selected into the academy that you apply for or not. The good thing about it is that if for some reason you're denied entrance, then every delay is not a denial, and you can apply as many times as you like.
Right, got it. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
problem.
you. Okay, one more. I got a few more. Y'all want to take some more? Mallory Sailors, you're back unmuted. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I guess I had a question about after the application process. What's your main form of like letting people know? Is it phone or email or?
It all depends. We try to we do both. We send you an email, and sometimes we'll give you a phone call. So we try to communicate via both. Sometimes what unfortunately happens is we'll send out an electronic message, and it may go to the receiver's spam, and they may not necessarily get it. So one of the things that we try to do, and sometimes we don't. Someone may slip through the cracks, is we may send out an email and they may not get it and we don't follow up. But a lot of times what we try to do is make sure that myself and the rest of our team members are responsive to those. Sometimes we get a little busy, but we're always more than willing to, if for some reason you don't get selected, to give you some feedback and try to help to see if we can get you the answers that you need. So if some reason in your particular situation, if you have one, if that did not happen, please reach out to one of us outside of this webinar, and we'll make sure that we address your situation privately and directly one-on-one. Is that fair?
Yes, and I had one more question.
Okay, I got one more answer.
Okay, so when if you get accepted and all that and you complete the CARES Academy, you are CARES certified, and then if you take the test, you're CPS certified?
No, once you complete the academy, that Friday you will officially be a CARES, and once you are CARES, you will always be a CARES. However, there's a separate component to that. Once you complete the exam, then you will be a certified peer specialist for addictive disease. Whereas we will send your information in to the Department of Behavioral Health and Disabilities, and they will have you in their database as also being a CPS AD. So if you decide that you want to have a job, or your employer or whatever provider you may be employed for, if they want to, a lot of these organizations and these providers are required to have CARES in certain positions. So the AD, addictive disease aspect, is to ensure that you are a certified peer specialist for addictive disease. And that's something a little bit different from just being a regular CARES, because if you, for some reason, if you don't maintain your continuing education units, you will no longer be active for AD, but you will always be a CARES, because we can't take the training from you.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes it a little more clear. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to hold the rest of the questions for now, and we're not going to try to paralyze the time. So what we're going to do, because some of these questions I'm sure that you're asking will maybe cover as we continue with the presentation. So if you can just kind of park your questions for a second, then we'll kind of go through the rest of the presentation. And at the end, if it's something that we did not cover, we will try our best to make sure that we get you what you need. All right, so what we're about to do now is we're going to get into applying for CARES. So one of the things that we like to talk about as we do this presentation is we're going to give you somewhat of a secret sauce or a blueprint on how to put forth your best effort via your writing sample, your references, and your oral interview. So I know it's some of y'all on here that's still going to do what y'all want to do, and that's fine. However, I'm going to give you what you need. Karen and I are going to give you what you need to increase the probability of you being accepted. So let's go with it, Karen.
Okay, so this next slide talks about applying for CARES, the writing sample part. Now we're going to go over this slide, and then we're going to pull up one of your handouts that is going to be a good example of a writing sample, someone that wrote a writing sample. And this writing sample, by the way, is scored. Each of the three pieces that you send in, one writing sample, two references, are going to be scored by two of our CARES, and then we will then actually call your references. So in other words, you have a chance to really get 5 scores from us. You'll get the score from the writing sample, a score from the 2 references, that would be 3, and then a score from each of your references because we will call them. So that would be like 5 different areas that you're going to be scored in. And the first 3, the writing sample and the 2 references, you can get up to 25 points for each of those pieces. So for the writing sample, the question is, we're looking for how the applicant demonstrates that they possess the values of CARES. And you can find the values of CARES on our website, but I will give them to you so that you can, write these down if you really want to do that. Okay. So we're looking for how you talk a little bit about hope, the hope in your life, how you talk about integrity, and I'll slow down so you can write these down. And then there's commitment, recovery, wellness, and diversity. Those are the values. Now, when we read your writing sample, we are kind of like on the lookout for how you experience hope, how you experience wellness, and how you experience these things. So that's one of the things. We want to know how you possess the values of CARES. Then we're also looking for number 2, do you possess leadership qualities for CARES? Leadership qualities means perhaps on your job you are a supervisor, you were the lead somebody, that's one example. If you have started your own business, that would be a leadership. If you are involved with the 12-step, if you're in the 12-step arena, leadership would include something you're doing in your group. Perhaps you are your group service representative, which is called a GSR. Perhaps you have a position like secretary or treasurer. Perhaps you're doing something at the area level. It's called district in AA and area in NA. I'm not sure what they call it in CA or some of the other 12-step arenas, but that's kind of what, if you have a leadership position in that arena. Perhaps you own your own business. That would be an example of leadership. Perhaps you have created a program or something that supports recovery or anything else. Maybe on your job you've created something. That would be leadership. That's kind of what we consider leadership. And I know that's kind of a gray area, so you would have to kind of write in it, maybe give an example of how you've created leadership in your life. Then we're looking for how you promote recovery in your life. So since we value different pathways of recovery, you have to give us an example of some of what your pathway is and how you promote that in your life. And this will be made a little bit clear when you look at one of these the writing sample that we have for you. The next thing we're looking for is how you contribute to the community efforts for sustained recovery. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the writing sample. And that might be simply something that you're doing in your community. It could be maybe you're doing something at your church that would involve, recovery community. Maybe you're doing something in your community. Maybe you're a part of a group that is promoting recovery or perhaps supporting people that are in recovery. And then lastly, we want to know, is your overall writing sample in alignment with our mission and our values of CARES? So that's what we're looking for as we score your writing sample. Each of those 5 points up there, you can get anywhere from 1 to 5. So if you have an excellent or a very good writing sample, the possibility is that you would get a 25. That would be the highest score you could get on that writing sample. We do get people that score that high. And usually in the high 20s would certainly get you into at least to the interview process, because this is really just the first step in your applying for CARES.
Right.
So now if we could put up the the writing sample. Can you do
And Karen,
that,
real
Doreen?
quick, the criteria for applying for CARES is high school diploma, GED, 2 years of continuous abstinent recovery. So, and when we talk about 2 years of abstinent recovery, if you're an individual that had used medication to support your recovery as prescribed, then we definitely consider that as being in recovery. So I know it's a few people out there, maybe just a few, that don't believe that people that use medication assisted recovery are in recovery. We're not of that at the council. We're not that. CARES do not subscribe to that particular belief. So if you do use medication, we would love for you to talk about that. We would love for you to speak about that, and we support you and we advocate for our peers that use medication assisted recovery.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Jay. I just overlooked that slide completely. So is there some way we can put up the writing sample, Doreen? All right. All right. So here is an example of a writing sample.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could take a moment to read that, and then Jay and I will talk a little bit about how this writing sample connects to what we're looking for, the 5 areas that we're looking for.
And one of the things that a lot of people kind of get confused as it relates to their writing sample and their reference letter is oftentimes individuals will confuse leadership with participation. So again, as Karen mentioned earlier, when we're looking for leaders. We believe in order for you to be a great leader, you have to be a good servant. So we're looking at things that you created, things that you started. If it doesn't have to be necessarily something specifically related to recovery. If you started a bake sale, if you started meetings where there were no meetings, if you develop a curriculum, if you did things within your community, within your group, at your job. So when you speak to your leadership qualities, then please speak to those specifically about leadership versus the things that you participated in. So that one kind of tricks people up. So just be clear about highlighting and placing emphasis on your leadership. And one of the things that was helpful for me is that as I wrote my writing sample, I went through each bullet to make sure that I kind of checked each box. And I also had the values set to the side to make sure that I incorporated those values and the things that we're looking for specifically in this writing sample. It's also very helpful if you let somebody else read your writing sample and give them the bullets also, so they can kind of look at it objectively and because they may see something that you did not put in there. And lastly, as it relates to this writing sample, do not be modest. This is a time to put forth your best effort. This is a time to beat your own drum and toot your own horn.
Jay is correct about that. All right, so I'm thinking maybe I'll give you a few minutes or two to finish reading this, and then we'll start talking a little bit about how this relates to the areas that we score. All right, so this is obviously a young lady that is involved with a 12-step program because she talks about it in her writing sample. So the question is, first of all, we're going to skip down to number 2, which is the applicant possesses leadership qualities. We're looking for your leadership qualities, and so when we take a look at this, we're looking for leadership stuff that she has done. So if you go down, maybe halfway down into this first paragraph, maybe a little bit further down than that, it really looks like it may be the last sentence, but it's quite a lengthy one. She says, I have started meetings where there were none or where meetings were scarce and established these meetings in a centralized location to ensure that potential recovering persons, the homeless, young pregnant women, mothers with children, and recipients of drug court assignments would have walking distance access to a recovery meeting several times daily, 7 days a week. So the fact that she started a meeting would be an example of leadership for us.
Mm-hmm.
Then further down in the her writing sample, she's talked about positions that she held in the 12-step arena. She says she was a participant in the phone line committee. That's not a position, but we'll look further down. So she served on the Public Information Committee. Other positions I've held, including Group Service Representative, that would be like what's called a GSR. She's held secretary position. She's held the position of treasurer. She's been vice chair of an area service committee. So those would be great examples of leadership. So once again, leadership positions in her home group. That means group service representative. She was also treasurer and secretary and vice chair of an area service committee. And the fact that she started meetings where there were little or none, and tried to put them in centralized locations. So overall, for a score for her leadership, she would probably get from a 1 to a 5. I would probably give her a 5.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So
now some people may hold on for a second, Karen. Now, obviously, this writing sample, this young lady has done a lot. So we don't grade or score leadership by if you have a whole lot of leadership, because we understand that some people may not have as much time in recovery as others. So remember to place an emphasis on your leadership, not only within your recovery community, but also within your community, period. And it's not specifically limited to any amount of time. So, and it's all about how you word it, and it's all about how you write a compelling writing sample, so we can clearly see that you have leadership qualities. So, because a lot of people get discouraged and they say, "Well, I haven't done all this stuff," and because we do not compare one writing sample to the next, so we score each writing sample objectively based on its own individual merits. So don't let this kind of throw you off or anything when you see a lot of the things that this particular writing sample exemplifies.
And the other thing to promote, because we have people, this lady just happened to have 17 years, but we have people that come into the academy with 2 and 3 years, but they've done something that would we consider leadership, whether it be in a 12-step, whether it could be something on the job, or in the community, or at church. So we don't limit ourselves to just the information as this lady did. Most of her leadership stuff occurred in the 12-step arena, but it does not have to be. So now what we want to look at is how they're promoting recovery in their life. She talks a little bit about this. She uses the spiritual principles taught in the 12-step program to build an effective one-on-one relationship as a sponsor, and then she helps others achieve long-term recovery and create collaborative relationships between recovering people and organizations. So, and she's also sponsors women. So basically, for the applicant demonstrating and promoting recovery in their life, I would probably give her, out of a possible 5, I would probably give her a 4 or a 5. Because the other thing that she has done is she's done things to serve, like she's started meetings where there were either very little or none. She's also provided recreation for people in recovery. So I would, in terms of promoting recovery in their life, as she promotes recovery for others, she's also promoting recovery in her life. So she would get a 4 or 5 for that also. Then we're looking for the applicant contributes to community efforts for sustained recovery. Certainly she's done that. She's started meetings where there were none. She's started, help people that were homeless, young pregnant women, and mothers with children, and drug court recipients when she started these meetings, so that they could have access to this actually and walk to them rather than have to depend on a ride, which oftentimes people, that's a struggle for some people. She also promoted recreation things as part of recovery, so that kind of helps community efforts for sustained recovery. When you can get people involved and they feel like they're part of something, remember that was part of the things that help people recover, that they felt like they belong, had a sense of belonging, that helped too. So I would give her a 5 for the applicant contributes to community efforts for sustained recovery, just as a result of some of those things that she's done. Then going back up to the values. Now, I gave you 6 values. And for the values, I hear hope. Jay, where do you hear hope in that?
Let me see. I've been honored to practice principles. You got me on the going. To me, when I read the writing sample, I see a lot of areas that she's exemplified hope. For one, that the things that she does in her community, the things that she's done with the homeless, with mothers and children, and those type of service positions, fundraisers, dances, road trips. She has really did some things within her community and her own personal development that exemplifies hope and also diversity. So as I mentioned earlier, when she's dealing with the homeless, young people, mothers and children, recipients of the drug court assignment. So I definitely see diversity and hope.
Right. And then, of course, we hear recovery, because all these things basically are based on the fact that she's in recovery, that she's able to do these things. Otherwise, she would probably not be able to do them for her community. Certainly integrity, the fact that she's looking out for other people. She's looking out for the homeless and young pregnant women and drug court recipients. So the fact that she's able to do all these things and hold positions in her home group, you have to have some integrity to do that, and certainly commitment, because she's followed through with this stuff. So I hear all 6 of the values in her writing sample. So going back up to number 1, which is the applicant demonstrates that they possess the values, I would give her a 5. Would you do about the same, Jay, or thereabout?
Yes, I would. I definitely would.
So to me, it looks like this applicant would get a 24 or 25 out of 25 points. I have a possible 25. Just looking at. So let's go on now, because I want to leave time for the end of this, and we're kind of to look at the reference letter. So I'm pulling up the reference letter. And this is actually a Jane Doe. So actually this was really a made-up reference. This was not a reference that someone sent in. I kind of made this up to give people an example of so many of our people that are involved, that we get applications from, are people that are in recovery from a 12-step arena, but that does not have to be the case, and this young lady is not. So I thought this would be a good way of promoting somebody that does her recovery through the community. She does it through volunteer and community work. That would really be her pathway. So I'll give you a minute to read this, a minute or two to read this, and then we're going to talk about this reference letter and look at the areas and how we score our reference letters. Doreen, do we have a lot of questions on our? Doreen?
Yes, we have several hands raised.
People?
Yes, we have several hands raised. They have some chats. And
let's finish this up. Okay. Let's finish this up, and then we'll go to the questions. Take time for questions. So I want to give enough, like maybe 15 minutes for questions or so.
All right.
So looking at this reference letter, we're going to start out the reference, and this is all, these bullet points are on your actually on the application, y'all. So if you get lost and you're not sure where you're looking, you can always go to the application and get this information. So we're looking for, once again, leadership qualities. That because we are looking for people that are going to be leaders in their community, that's why we focus on leadership qualities. So you see that not just in the writing sample, but we want to hear the references speak to your leadership qualities too. So as I look at this, I'm looking at leadership quality, and I see that she is active in her Recovery Church's ministry. It doesn't say what she does, so that's not quite leadership. But it says, the second paragraph talks about how she saw the need and she began to focus on finding a way to bring jobs. So she actually found business partners that were willing to help her set up a job fair. So she actually created a job fair, found partners in the community that were willing to help her, And then also, because the employment rate was so high, she just felt like there was a need in her community to do so. So that's what she did. One of the things that impressed me about her is that her ability to reach out across economic and racial barriers to serve others. And let me go back. That is number 3. The applicant works well with diverse groups of people. So it talks about the ability to reach across both economic and racial barriers to serve others. That would be an example of working well with diverse groups of people. Another way she does this is by working with various groups to ensure that her community is being served. So she's out in her community working with various groups. That would be also probably diversity. So this also goes into working a quality recovery program, because her pathway, y'all, is supporting and developing things in her community. In other words, volunteering and building up her community. So she's got a job fair. She holds an annual job fair. She found business partners that were willing to help her with that. So these are ways that she works with diverse groups of people, but also works on the quality of her recovery program. So if I had to give her points for that, first of all, just for even the leadership alone, I would probably give her a 4 or 5. And based on that, do you see anything else, Jay, that needs to speak to her leadership?
No, not necessarily. I think the thing about the beginning of small business, that was something that kind of stood out for me. And
it said she donates her time to helping those persons that are still struggling. It was a dream of hers to start groups at her church that focus on spreading the word of the possibility of recovery. She set out to do just that. So that dream became a reality. So she started not necessarily meetings, but I guess they were meetings, but in her church to let people know that recovery was possible. That was a dream of hers, and it became a reality. So that would be another example of leadership also. Mm-hmm. And her recovery program, in other words, promoting her recovery program. Yeah, the quality of it. And then the next thing we're looking for is, like I said, working with diverse groups of people. We found that she did that in her community through the job finding, the unemployment thing, and also through her church work and active. Also, it said, where did it say that?
Right there, one of the things
that's both economic and racial barriers. Yeah, go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
Right, that's it. No, that's exactly what I was going to point out, Karen. Thank you for mentioning that. She says one of the things that impressed me most about Jane is her ability to reach across both economic and racial barriers to serve others. So if I'm a scorer and I'm reading this particular writing reference letter and I'm looking for specifically something about diversity, that right there would have caught my attention, and as a consequence, I would have gave her high scores for that particular line in itself.
Okay. The applicant conveys hope to others regarding recovery. Everything that we have read in those first 3 paragraphs really talk about her providing hope to people, regardless of their pathway, to let them know that recovery is possible. So I would give her a 5 for the quality of her recovery program, also a 5 for leadership because she started a meeting at her church that focused on spreading the word about recovery. She started a job fair. She's just doing all kind of tireless work in her community. And then for the quality of recovery, same thing, I'd give her a 5 because all this work that community work that she was doing, that would be her pathway. Her pathway is doing community work. Working well with diverse groups of people, we said we give her a 5 for that information we just talked about. Conveying hope to others, certainly through the job fair, through starting that the dream of church focusing on spreading the word of possibility of recovery. And then the last thing we look for is that the person or the applicant is reliable and accountable. And it says in the very last paragraph, when she gives her word, you can be assured that she's going to follow through. She is both timely and reliable. So I would give her a 5 for that because she talks about when she says she's going to do something, you can depend on it. She didn't just tell us that she was reliable. She said if she says she's going to do something, she's going to follow through.
Right.
And then lastly, she is a woman who's willing to put her reputation on the line for those individuals that have a hard time speaking up for themselves. That lets us know she's advocating for her brothers and sisters in recovery, or those that are trying to seek recovery. So that
and also,
would be
just
what
as
a
a
writing
point of
example would look like. Go ahead, Jay.
exact. Thank you, Karen. One of the things too. So the reference letters cannot be a family member or a spouse. Also, one of the references, we prefer that one of the references be someone that's in recovery, and we will love that both of your references know that you're in recovery. I know that may sound a little silly, but sometimes we reach out to references and we ask them, because we call the references, so we do phone interviews, so we call to ask your references a few questions, and those questions and their responses can adversely or either improve your score. So another thing, so we call your references twice, and we leave messages, and they can call us back if we can't reach them. So now the third time, we will call the particular applicant and say, hey, we've been trying to get in touch with your reference. We can't get in touch with them. Would you please have them call us at the office? So we make 2 attempts to each reference, and the third time we'll contact you. And in the event that we do not hear from the reference, then we will score that to reflect that we didn't talk to that particular reference.
So our suggestion is that you give us somebody that can be reached, or at least we can leave a number and they would call us back. And usually people that are in the judicial system don't seem to get back with us in a timely manner, and we're not necessarily impressed with people that are the important people in your community. We'd almost would rather hear from regular people that we know that are supporting your recovery. And then lastly, it's about 6:15 now, and so we want to leave these last 15 minutes for questions. So Doreen, we got some people waiting, right? Doreen?
Yes, ma'am. I need to unmute myself so I can let you hear me. So I'm gonna unmute. There's I'm gonna unmute Joya. I'm unmuting you. I know you have several people that are with you that had some questions. So you want to go ahead and be mindful of the time? Joya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
One of the questions we had was regarding the high schools that you're in. At what capacity are you dealing with the high schools, and what does that entail?
Well, those right now we're only taking questions as it relates to the writing sample or the reference letters. Is any other questions outside of this particular workshop dealing with the hospital or dealing with the high school? Any of that, you can send myself, j@gasubstanceabuse.org, an email, and I will try to address those questions separately, because what we want to try to do is limit the questions specifically for those that are applying for CARES.
Okay, hi. My name is Evita. So
Hey, Evita.
Hi. So on the 2 references, it stated that they're not to be a family member or a spouse. Does that
correct?
Your boyfriend? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, that's all.
Pardon me?
We kind of answered the question for them. This is Roselle.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey,
How you doing, Roselle?
Hi. We have we're getting ready to start our RCO planning meeting here in a few minutes at 6:30.
Right.
And we have some family members who are here. And what we wanted the family members had a couple of questions, and that was, number one, is the CARES Academy solely for people who have had a problem with substance abuse? Several of them have gone through Al-Anon, have been very supportive of their families, and are interested. Is there can they join, or is there some other suggestion?
No, you have to have had an issue with substance abuse in order to become a CARES. Yeah, you can be our advocate. You can do all that, but you have to have, in order to come through the academy, you have to have 2 years of continuous absence from some kind of drug.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
You doing?
Hello.
And John CARES?
Yes.
Yes.
Any more questions?
Did you have another question, or are you good?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer, I'm trying to unmute you. You have yourself self-muted. I'm telling everybody now who's got their self-muted that they do you have okay, go ahead, Jennifer. You're unmuted.
I actually did not re-raise my hand. I think it's just raised.
Okay. Thank you. Frida Green, you have yourself muted. If you unmute yourself, go ahead.
I just did. Hello, everyone. How y'all doing?
Good.
Okay, Frida.
Hi. Listen, Miss Karen, I have about 4 people from the workshop that you did with us in Columbus last week that are going for the next training. Can I write a reference letter for each one of them for the same training?
Well, yes, you can, but each reference letter would obviously be different. You know 14 people that well that you can write a reference letter?
The 4 that want me to, that asked me to write a letter.
It's 4.
Yeah, it's only 4 from the workshop from last week that's going for the May class.
Okay.
And I do know them. They volunteer at the RCO in Columbus. When they will all be different. I just wanted to make sure I can write 4 in the same, write those more than one in the same group.
You may.
Thank you. Barbara, I am unmuting you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, ma'am. If you would, please forgive me. I had you guys on telephone and I finally made it to the house and I wasn't able to write down the 6 things that you want on your letter. If you would, please go back over that.
The values?
Yeah, the 6 values that you're looking for. Hope.
On the website. I'm sorry.
Wellness. I think they're on our website.
It is on your
website. We can give them to you. Right, but I give them to you real quick. So write them down real quick for us. So the first one is hope.
Yes.
The second one is integrity.
Gotcha.
The next one is recovery.
Okay.
Diversity.
Gotcha.
Wellness.
Yes, sir.
And commitment.
Thank you so much. I do apologize for being redundant.
That's okay. No.
No problem. No problem.
And thank you so much for your service.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Y'all have a blessed day.
Thank you.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, so just stop right there for 1 second. So Karen and I we're gonna give you an example of the OR interview. So a lot of times people will get they'll get past the writing sample stage, and then when they get to the OR interview, sometimes they literally talk themselves out of the academy. So Karen and I, we're going to give you one clear example of how we tend to respond when we're dealing with peers. So Karen, if you would read one of these to me from Claudia, and I will respond as if I'm a peer.
Okay. So Claudia is a 25-year-old African-American woman who was recently released from prison and is on parole. One of her conditions is that she attends substance abuse treatment. She walks into the facility where you work to meet you. You greet her in the waiting room and she says to you, I used to have a drug problem, but I don't have one anymore. I have 2.5 years clean time. What might you say to Claudia?
Hi, Claudia. Thanks so much for coming in. First of all, I am so proud of you for having 2.5 years of recovery time. That is so impressive. And I want to start off by acknowledging that and lifting that up. And I do understand that you're saying that you don't have a drug problem anymore, but we don't even really have to talk about drugs. Let's just talk about the things, whatever you want to talk about. If drugs is not something that you want to necessarily talk about, that's fine. I'm here to support you in whatever that looks like for you. I'm happy that you're home from prison, and I want to take this opportunity to try to see if we can possibly build a relationship that's built on trust and transparency, and we can move from there. We don't have to talk about drugs or anything like that. I'm just here to support you and advocate for you and help support you in whatever pathway that you decide to go.
So do you understand what Jay and I did? We talked a little bit about a young lady, and we uplifted that young lady. Jay uplifted her, letting her know that, you know what, I'm just here to support you. We don't have to talk about drugs. As a peer coach, you're supposed to be our job really is to walk beside the peer we're working with and give them encouragement. And that's just what he did. You don't have to talk about drugs, but if you want to have some other ideas we want to talk about, I want to form a relationship with you so that I can support your recovery.
And not only that, one of the things that I failed to mention in my response that would have helped my response to get a little bit more traction as it relates to scoring is I should have used my story. So I could have added to this response and saying, you know what, we have something in common. I did some prison time also. So anytime during the oral interview phase, if you can use your story, then that's great. So you would get points based upon your ability to use your story. You will also get points based upon did you answer the question, did you demonstrate flexibility relative to other pathways of recovery. So I wouldn't have told her something like, well, you do have a drug problem. Once an addict, always an addict. Or I wouldn't have definitely not told her that, because one of the things that we believe is that addiction is the opposite. Connection is the opposite of addiction. So when we have a connection with the peer, we try to maintain that connection, and oftentimes those connections are built and sustained through the way that we use language. So I wouldn't have been the type of person that would have said either you do it this way or the highway. So we have to be flexible relative to our many recovery pathways, because we believe and we promote via many pathways. Also, my energy. We look for you to have positive energy. In other words, do I want to be around you for a whole week? And lastly, that we listen to the peer with empathy and compassion. So when you respond, if you are fortunate enough to get invited to the oral interview, please refer back to the handout that is in the PDF under Applying for CARES interview, and to ensure that when you do get a question or a scenario, that you respond in a manner that is conducive to a peer, that is non-judgmental, and that is not directive. We have some people that come in and they get questions, and immediately they don't score well because they are so rigid in their responses. So go back to this particular PDF that has the slides in it, and it will give you the bullets of the things that we're looking for. So I just wanted to give you at least one example of the oral interview. So in the event that you get to that, when you get to that particular stage, because I believe that everyone will have an opportunity to be promoted at one time or another to the oral interview and eventually to CARES. So the messaging that we use and the impact that we know that it have on peers is paramount to when we providing peer services. So we're going to we have about 5 minutes. We're going to try to entertain a few more questions. So please limit your questions specifically to writing sample, reference letter, or interview.
Okay, Jay, I've answered it with the typing, but one of the chats asked, can they use their original writing sample? Can we update application if we've already submitted it? That's the exact question.
So you're saying this? Go ahead, Karen.
In other words, have they already submitted? This is for CARES 34. And I know we do have a few applications because I did look into that, but you can always resubmit. So in other words, if you find that you really, and oftentimes we will call people if they get their application in ahead of time and say, you might want to look at this or that because this would give you a better score if you did such and such. So I'm not sure that we'll have time this time, but that usually I have oftentimes done that when I get an application in fairly early so that I can have time to respond, and then they can in time do their, admit another application.
So, any more questions, Doreen?
I have Jennifer. You've muted yourself. I have several people who've muted themselves. So I'm gonna announce them. Jennifer, you've self-muted. I'm trying to take you off mute. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
When he states the PDF, is that something that we're looking at, that we're going to be able to keep as a part of this webinar, or is it in the email? I'm just confused as to the PDFs.
So are you on the webinar on your computer?
I'm actually using my phone because I was driving in the beginning.
Okay, so it's a webinar. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you can access the PDF and the reference letter and the writing sample from your phone. So I'm not sure about that. So I know from a desktop, you should be able to do it. So if you're accessing the webinar through your phone, I'm not sure if that's going to be an option for you.
And it won't be available once this is over?
No, ma'am. We don't typically send those out to individuals. So we typically give them either out on the webinar or either when you actually come in person to to participate in a ROSC Cares workshop that we do throughout the state.
Yeah, so I was going to answer that too, that whatever you were sent with your invitation as you registered, the handouts were available on that invitation.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, I know it's almost 6:29. Let me see. Misty, I'm trying to unmute you. You have yourself muted. Did you want to ask a question? We only have a few more minutes, guys. It's supposed to end at 6:30, but we're trying to get you in. Frida Green, I think hers was answered already. And okay, Mitchell, I'm trying to unmute you. You said you believe your question was answered, but I want to make sure you're unmuted. You want to go ahead?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I don't know if I asked the question effectively. You mentioned a list of 25 or so community recovery organizations. Where can we look at that location list?
For RCOs,
I don't know. Yeah, the RCO list. If you give us a call, we can see that you get one, because I don't know that it's anywhere electronically.
Oh, is it RCO?
Yes.
Yes.
Recovery Community Organizations. Okay, got it. All right, yeah, I'll shoot you guys an email so I can get a list of that, because that's something I'm
okay.
familiar with.
All right.
Not exactly.
Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to say, I don't think I asked this question effectively either. If one of your professionals experiences a setback that includes getting intoxicated again, they would technically no longer have that 2+ year requirement for being in recovery.
Correct.
Well, I'm guessing some people start getting intoxicated as they're working in this field, and I'm wondering what is done to protect the clients in case their professional is now getting intoxicated again.
Right, that would be a question that we would want to address.
Yeah.
Right, that's not a question that we would typically address during this, but we would love to have a broader conversation with you about that, either when you send us an email about your RCO, then also include that question, and we'll try to get someone from our team that can address that to you directly.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
They can all do that. I think we've covered.
Yeah. I think we're at.
All right. So again, we're trying to grow a robust peer workforce throughout the state of Georgia. So we welcome you, we encourage you, and we'll support you however we can to make sure that you have the best shot at entering into CARES. And again, if for some reason once you apply, if you're not accepted, you are welcome to call and get your feedback. We'll try to get to you as best we can. Sometimes we don't always do very good at that, and we continue to try to strive to be better at that. But we do. We invite you and we welcome you to come. So thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
One of the other things before we go any further, we need to. You mentioned the fact that the reference letter could not be a family member. One of the two reference letters needs to be someone that identifies themselves as being in recovery. So they need to mention that. One of your references need to mention that. And I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm glad you reiterated that same thing. So that's perfect. So again, if we didn't cover everything, we apologize. We wanted to try to at least give you the meat of what we are looking for. So hopefully this was helpful for you. And again, we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for joining us on the webinar.
Thank you all. If you have any other questions, you can call the office directly. We appreciate your attendance for the CARES March webinar. Have a good night.